These are the solutions for Quarter 1, Test 4 for the study guide for Algebra B. So let's take a look at our first problem here. And it's asking us to solve an equation with some decimals. And so if I ever have decimals in a problem, lots of decimals, especially if I have to add or subtract them, I usually like to get rid of them. So what I'm going to end up doing is multiplying this entire equation by 10. So each of the numbers here by 10 will move that decimal one space to the right. So it becomes 5 plus 3y equals 7y minus 3. So now I'm ready to go ahead and subtract that 3y from both sides. And so now what I have is a 5 equals 4y minus 3. Well, from this point, I can go ahead and add that 3 to both sides. And when I do that, I'm left with an 8 equals 4y, and then divide by the 4, and we have our answer there. So in this case, y is equal to 2. Well, the next problem involves an equation with some parentheses. So I'm going to eliminate those parentheses using the distributive property. So I'm left with 2k minus 5 equals 3 minus 6k. So from this point, I can go ahead and start moving some terms. I'll go ahead and subtract that 2k from both sides. And when I do that, I'm left with this negative 5. Make sure I bring down my sign in front of the term. Common mistake is when we have a constant or a number we're bringing down, and it's the only one left and it has a minus sign in front. Sometimes we get excited and just don't bring down the sign. Anyhow, we have a negative 8k because we're adding those two numbers. They are on the same sign, which is why we added them. And same thing over here. See how they're the same sign, and that gives me a negative 8. So notice that I'm bringing down the number and the sign as well. So when I go ahead and do the division, I'm not making the sign error. So I'm dividing by negative 8, so I see the negative signs cancel, and k equals 1. Next problem involves some combining of like terms on the left-hand side, so we'll start with that. A positive 2 and a positive 3 make 5. Bring down that minus 5c, and now start using the distributive property on the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, bring down that negative 2, and multiplying over that subtraction, I'm left with negative 2 plus 2c. Notice it's a plus because of the negative and the negative. So now we're ready to combine some more like terms. Right here, these two make negative 4, and then I go ahead and bring down my positive 2c equals 5 minus 5c. So now I'm ready to start moving terms from one side of the equal sign to the next. So I'm going to add 5c to both sides. So it leaves me with the 5 equals negative 4 plus 7c. So my next move is to add the 4 to both sides. So I'll add 4 over here as well. And so what that leaves me with is a positive 9 equals 7c. So when I go ahead and do the division, divide by 7 on both sides, it leaves me with 9/7 equals c. So looking at the next problem, it's an absolute value equation. Now whenever we have absolute value, we always want to isolate the absolute value. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. That leaves me with the absolute value of 3x minus 2 equaling 4. So now we're ready to solve. And so what we're going to do is take that 3x minus 2, set it equal to 4, but also set it equal to negative 4. And so now we're ready to isolate the value of x on both sides to find the values that make either 4 or negative 4. And so we're going to end up adding 2 to both sides. And so this leaves us with a negative 2 equals 3x. And on this side we get a positive 6. So now we're ready to divide by the 3. And when we do that, we end up with 1 as a fraction. So x can be negative 2/3, but it could also be positive 2. So those are the two solutions you can have in for x that will make this the case. Looking at the next one, again, the whole idea is to isolate the absolute value first. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 7 to all sides. So now I have this 2 times the absolute value of x equals 16. So now we're ready to divide by 2 on both sides. And so now I've got this absolute value of x equals 8. And so now, since the absolute value is isolated, we could set it equal to that number and its opposite. However, there's no work to be done, so that gives us our answer. -8 and +8 are the two solutions. Well, over here we have an inequality. First thing we want to do is simplify the right-hand side, so I'm going to distribute that -3 over that addition. So I'm left with an x minus 3x minus 6. Notice the sign there, negative times a positive makes the negative. Collect some like terms here. X minus 3x makes a -2x minus 6. Bring down the inequality sign and now start moving terms. So here I'm going to go ahead and add the 6 to all sides. So that leaves me with 10 is greater than -2x. So one more step there. I'm going to go ahead and divide by -2. And when I do that, I'm left with a -5. Now notice that I divided by a negative, so that inequality sign is going to switch. Now typically we don't write the answer this way. People like to have x first, especially with inequalities. So if I do put x first and the -5 second, notice that x is greater than -5. So I need to make sure I have the inequality sign facing the same direction. See, x is greater than -5. So if you switch the variable on the opposite side, it's going to switch the inequality sign. Well, let's take a look at our next 3 problems. Another one of the problems that involves inequalities, so we're going to go ahead and distribute that 4 over both sides. So we're left with 4x plus 4, or I'm sorry, we forgot to multiply the 2 by the 4, so let's fix that real quick. So 4 times 2 makes 8, and that's greater than 6. So now we're ready to subtract the 8 from all sides. Leaves us with this 4x is greater than -2. Now notice that here I'm dividing by a positive, so the inequality sign is not going to change directions, because when I divide by a positive, the sign stays the same. So x is still greater than, and then it's a fraction, so I'm going to write -1/2. That is my solution. Next one, a video store has 2 movie rental plans. Plan A includes, so let's write down A here, and that includes a $25 membership fee, so you're going to pay that $25 membership fee. But since it's a membership fee, it's just a one-time fee. Plus, so we'll bring in the plus sign, $1.25 for each movie rental. So each tells us that we're going to have a variable term. It depends on the number of movie rentals we end up purchasing or using. So the question always tells us if we're correct, if that's where the variable goes. So I'll skip down to the question. It says, for what number of movie rentals? Yes, so that's where a variable goes. Now, it says for what number of movie rentals is Plan B here, less than Plan A. So less than means, notice how it's pointing to Plan B open to Plan A. So A must be greater than. It says Plan B costs $40 unlimited. So that's all you have. You don't have to pay for the rentals. So you're just going to pay this $40. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. So I'm going to subtract that 25 from all sides. So when I do that, I still have this 1 and 25/100ths r is greater than. Here I have to borrow, so this makes 15. So now I'm ready to do the division. So when you divide by a decimal, in this case I've got to move the decimal 2 spaces. That means I need to move this decimal 2 spaces. That means adding 2 zeros. So when I go ahead and do the division, down below I've got 125 into 1500. So 125 goes into 150 just one time. Bring down the 125, subtract, and it goes into 250 2 times. So r is greater than 12. So what that means is 13 or more. So Plan B is less after 13 movies. 13 movies. At 12, it's not. So you have to go to 13. A moving company charges $800 plus $16 per hour. Again, you see that word per or each. Typically, that's your variable. Go back into the question. How long is the job until the company is charged the same, no matter which company is used? So how long, they're talking about time here. So they're talking about hours. And so definitely, this is where a variable goes. And so since it's the same, we're going to set them equal. And the other company charges $720 plus $21 per hour. So I go ahead and do some subtraction. Subtract that 16h from both sides. So that leaves me with this 800 equals 720 plus, and this makes 5h. And so now I'm ready to move this 720 from both sides. So I'm going to subtract that. And that leaves me with 60, actually, I'm sorry, 80. 80 equals 5h. And so now we do some division. And when we divide 5 into 80, it goes 16 times. So write down those units, what 16 represents. It's hours. So after 16 hours, the two companies charge the same amount. Well, those are the types of problems you're going to see on this week's test. Good luck.